Perfect, Marjorie. Share what you shared with me last time I gave a class.
Okay, so you ended up with, like, the whole class was all about Mitzrayim and what is our Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is our sad, our
constricted place. Yeah.
So what's our constricting place? And you mentioned different things: perfection, control, and how others will look at us. So I just took it into like, how can we live our lives is going from this state of perfection to acceptance, accepting ourselves, accepting others, accepting like everything that comes our way. And instead of control, moving into a state of trust, where we don't have to control everything in order for it to come out right. Trust in Hashem, trust in others. And then also, what will others think of us? Instead of going in what the others are thinking, turn into ourselves, tune into yourself. What is my ratzon? And when we live with acceptance, trust, and our own ratzon, we're allowing ourselves to be a conduit of God and being able to be giving time, energy, money, compliments to pass on God's shefa into the world, and to tune into ourselves and say, if we're feeling anger or mistrust or resentment or anything, then to notice, was I really in tune with my own ratzon, or am I living in another place of Mitzrayim, of sad, of constriction, of that same going back to the perfection, control, and what will others think? So it's this cycle of just living in acceptance, trust, and my ratzon. It's basically everything you keep saying. Like, it's sunk in, I guess.
No, and I think you said it in a more positive way. Like, I was saying what not to do, and you were giving the things of what yes to do. Like, you gave us the way of what to do. Thank you. And we're going to hit on those. You were actually the first avodah that I did this week. I did an avodah between my daughter Tam, my daughter Shalhevet, and it has to do with what we were just talking about. So I'm going to start with that avodah, and we're going to continue the class because I want to teach about these days that we're starting from Pesach to Shavuot, and it's a whole learning and coming to Matan Torah with a different kind of character, a different midot of what we're trying to develop within us. So let's get into that. Okay, Marge, you could mute yourself. If you, okay, great, thank you. So I usually start the class for anyone who's new with an avodah that I do on myself. However, this was too good to pass on. The avodah that I was doing were minor this week, but I had an avodah between my two daughters, and I think it could really be very helpful to women, because it's an aspect of our lives that we are constantly banging up against. So my daughter Shalhevet, who lives an hour away from Tel Aviv, a couple of days ago called up and said, Ima, what day is good for you that I come to Tel Aviv to be with you? She has two kids and she's homeschooling, and she's really she's pretty free. There's a homeschooling community in Pardes Chana, but she likes to come once a week to see me. And she said, you know what? So I told her, I'm very busy because there are many bar mitzvahs coming in, so I'm less available, but I have 3 hours. I could see you let's spend together between 3 and 6. She said, you know what? No problem. I'll go visit my sister Tal. And she and Tal made it that they're going to meet at 11 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock we'll all meet together at the park. So Shalhevet started her way to Tel Aviv, and her 2-year-old was screaming and screaming in the car. He was supposed to fall asleep, and he did, and she had no idea what's wrong. Stop. What do you want? What can I give you? Stop crying. We're on the highway. Like, I just need to get to Tel Aviv. He cried for 45 minutes. She had no clue why. He was feeling fine, everything. And she told her sister, I'll be by you at 11. So at 11, there's no parking where Tal lives. And Shalhevet wanted to use Tal's parking spot. And she wanted Tal to come out and just take the two kids so that she could find a parking spot. And she told Tal exactly she's going to be there at 11. She was there at 11:03, and she's calling up Tal, and Tal's not answering. and she's driving around for 20 more minutes to try to find the parking spot. She couldn't find the parking spot. She was so angry. She just drove to my house, and she finally Tal noticed that she has 6 missed calls. She calls up Shalhev and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see the call." Shalhev goes, "What do you mean you didn't see the call? I told you I was going to be there at 11. Where were you?" She said, "Well, at 5 to 11, my son wanted ice cream. I took him out. My phone was on mute. I didn't hear you. I went to get him ice cream." And she said, but you know, I was coming to you at 11. I told you. Like, where were you? And she totally lit into her, yelled at her, etc. And she comes to my house, all riled up. And she came to my house before the time I wasn't even home. She just played with the children. And the first, so she said, "You know, could you believe this is what Tal did? I drove an hour, the baby screaming, and she wasn't there for me, and the parking spot wasn't ready, and she wasn't answering my phone call, and I'm never coming," and et cetera, et cetera. So at that point, when someone is very upset, you can't do an avodah with them. You need to just listen and validate. Because first of all, she wasn't even asking me to do an avodah with her. She was just trying to let off steam. And at a certain point, she calmed down, but she wasn't asking me to do an avodah with her at all. Today, she called me up and she said, "Listen, I have a problem because yesterday I was angry and yelling at Tal, and all I have in my heart towards people in Tel Aviv and towards my sister, that they all feel entitled, they all do what's good and comfortable for them. They don't respect anyone. No one in Tel Aviv respects anyone. They're all self-involved and and selfish. And my sister takes the cake." So I asked her, "Do you want to do avodah on it, or do you want to vent again?" And she said, "You know what? I want to do avodah because I couldn't sleep last night. I was boiling so much, and I'm never coming to Tel Aviv again. And if she wants to see me, let her come to Pardes Chana, and et cetera, et cetera." So I said, "Okay, what name would you give to what Tal did for you?" So she said, "Tal did not respect me." Now, usually when we try to give a name for it, it has to be a name that is positive. In other words, not in the no, she's not responsible, she's not respectful, she's not this, she's not that. No, we don't try to give these names. But I decided to go with it. To go with, my sister does not respect me. And the reason I went with it is because I know Shalhevet very well. And I asked her, "Shalhevet, before we even talk about Tal, I want to ask you, do you respect yourself?" So she said, "What do you mean? What do you mean, do I respect myself?" So I said, "When you started driving on the road and your baby is screaming and you're so agitated from it, when you continue driving, you're not respecting yourself. Forget about the baby. If you feel agitated, it means that something is awry." And she goes to me, "What do you expect from me, to just stop on the side in a highway and blah, blah?" I said, "No, you can also just go off the next exit and find a patch of grass and take him out and sit and figure out what you want to do. But driving for 45 minutes with a screaming baby is not respectful to yourself." Now, if you were okay with it and you'd say, "You know what, he's tired, he needs to sleep, I don't care, let him scream," that's fine. But when you're telling me that you're agitated and you're nervous, and now you get to Tal, and what Tal basically, presented to you is the fact that she was able to do what was good for her child. He asked for ice cream. She went down the block to get him an ice cream, and she was now. I told Shalhevet, I just gave you one aspect in this incident where you don't respect yourself. However, I want you to tell me what other places in your life you don't respect yourself. And she started to talk about it. And it turns out that her son is 2 years old, let's say, and he's still nursing. And he asks her to nurse 20 times a day. And she just gives into it, even though she doesn't want to. That's not respecting herself. She would like to give herself 20 minutes of exercise, and she doesn't give that to herself. That's not respecting herself. She would like to she would like to at days do something, to take care of herself, and then her children expect her or want her or ask of her to do things that they want for her to do, and she'll always put herself on hold for her children, and that's not respecting yourself. So over here, when her getting all agitated and triggered and angry and upset at the fact that her sister was not there the minute she told her she was going to be there, it was indicative of not that her sister's not respectful. The story wasn't even about Tal and going to get the ice cream. And yes, she's there, and no, she's there. And that wasn't the issue. The issue was really, Shalhevet, that when she saw this lack of respect, it was a reflection of the lack of respect she has for herself. And it's a huge, huge avodah to do, because it changes, like, it's a whole paradigm shift for Shalhevet in terms of the way she lives her life. And Tal was just a shaliach for her to be able to look at it and say, this is something I need to do an avodah on if it triggers me. Now, something really interesting, we all went to the park, and we sat down and we put out a big blanket, and the kids went to play, and we were feeding everyone. And when we sat down, a group of kids came and they started to play soccer not far from us. So Tal got up and told the kids, could you please go a little bit further, because we have little kids over here and we sat here first, and could you please go play somewhere else, because I don't want anything to happen to my children. And Shalhevet saw that and thought to herself, like, with the nerve, why is she telling them to go? If it doesn't work for her, let her move. According to our avodah, really, we're not supposed to be wanting anything from anyone. If we want to do something, like if someone is blocking me, I'm going to move. I'm not going to ask them, please move. No, I'll move. Like, I need to take care of my own good. Now, Tal is well within her right to ask the children to move. And the children could say yes or no. And then Tal's going to decide what her ratzon is and what she wants to do. Shalhevet couldn't even handle the fact that she asked. Like, here Tal is asking of someone to respect her and to move. And the respect issue is so huge for Shalhevet, or the lack of it for herself, that once again, she was triggered by Tal asking the people to move. So I finished the conversation with Shalhevet of, I just want her to think of other places in her life where she is not respecting herself. Okay. Now, last 2 weeks ago, first of all, I'm so happy to be here after Pesach, and I really missed this forum, and so happy to be back. But last 2 weeks ago, after the class that I gave, somebody called me up and said that, you remember the story that I told about my avodah 2 weeks ago, that I finished Pesach early and I packed up for the camping trip, and then Ralph made a face as I was packing up the car, and then I exploded. And when I exploded, I asked myself, what is the avodah that I need to do here? So this person called me up and said, here you are doing all the work for Pesach, doing all the work for the camping trip, packing up the car. Your husband makes a face, and you blame yourself, and you say that you need to do the avodah. She goes, it's not fair. It's not fair. How could that be? And I realized that for this question to be asked, it means that there has to be more of an understanding of what was happening over there. And the understanding is that people were put in my life. Everyone was put in my life. When I say people, I mean, first and foremost, my husband, because he's the first one I met. And then my children and my siblings and my parents and my friends. People were put in my life to enable me to grow, to enable me to expand, to really enable me to come close to Hashem. And if I find myself getting upset or angry, or if I feel compromised, then it's an indication to me that I know that I haven't been living my emet, and it's an opportunity to grow closer to Hashem. Why is it an opportunity to grow closer to Hashem? Because the minute I realized what angered me or triggered me or compromised me, right? The minute I realize it, I'm able to get to know my true authentic self better. And my true authentic self is actually the Hashem who's embodied in me. That neshama that's in me is very pure. It's not here to be angry and upset and triggered and and depressed and all those things. It's not that neshama is a part of Hashem that needs to be here in a happy way. And if I'm not, then I am disconnected from my authentic self. So I want to connect to my authentic self. And the people around me, those who, through them I see myself, that's how I get the self-knowledge to grow, to correct myself. Just like my daughter Shalhevet, through her interaction with her sister, that is how she's going to get to grow in this. So if she didn't have this interaction with her sister, how is she going to know what are the parts of her that she needs to elevate? I wanted to tell another story of an avodah of a friend of mine that a friend of mine did. Her name is Iris. She did it, with Michal my teacher. And she grew up in the kibbutz. And a kibbutz, when you grow up in a kibbutz, it's a very, very rigid lifestyle. Everything is like, according to the clock. And there was a very strong work ethic, because the kibbutzim were the first, they were the first organizations that actually started agricultural life in Israel in a national level. So because of the kibbutzim, when in 1948, when Israel became a state, and we got a 500,000 olim at that time, 500,000, how do you say, olim is really refugees from our countries, refugees from the Holocaust. And if it wasn't for the kibbutzim, people would have starved in Israel. So in order for the kibbutzim to function, they had very, very high work ethics. And people would wake up, at 5 o'clock every morning, and there's no such thing as sleeping late. And they actually worked 7 days a week. The non-religious kibbutzim, which were, for the most part, they were not religious. And the children went to the children's Bet Yeladim, and the parents saw the children 3 hours a day. And that way everyone could be working at their maximum capacity. And my friend Iris, she grew up in a kibbutz, and sure enough, every morning she wakes up at 5 o'clock. But every morning when she wakes up at 5 o'clock and she gets up and starts her day, she always in her mind, she goes like, but I want to sleep for another half hour. I want to just stay in bed another half hour. And she's constantly squashing it down, constantly choking that voice in her and struggling with it every morning. And she's 60 years old. So when I say struggling with it every morning, I mean from when she's 15 till 60, every morning she wakes up at 5. She doesn't miss a beat. She prays nets. She starts her morning exercise. She cooks breakfast for her family, and she starts working. By 7 o'clock, she's working. She told me, I want to learn how to eradicate the side of me that wants to sleep late. I don't want to have this kind of struggle every morning. And how do I eradicate it? And Michal told her, you cannot eradicate it, and it's not good for you to eradicate it. And actually, it's a very important part of you. There's a part of you that wants to get up and start your day early. And there's a part of you that just wants to be, and that's that part of you of forcing yourself. It's also the rigid part of you. And then there's just the soft part of you that wants to sleep late, that wants to allow herself to laze around, that wants to allow herself to not be on a rigid schedule, to be able to take it easy. So there's the part that wants to accomplish and be on the go and on the move. And then there's the part that's more easygoing. and you need both of those parts. But the problem is the easygoing part you totally squashed out, and you're trying to make it disappear. But it's a very important part of you, and not only does it have to come up, but you have to really make peace with it. Because trying to eradicate it means that you're not at peace with it. And she told her, every morning when you wake up, ask yourself, do I want to get up now, or do I want to, sleep for another half hour, another hour, another 2 hours? Like, do I want to get up now? Do I choose to get up, or do I choose to stay in bed a bit longer? But allow that desire its voice. Allow it to express itself. So she said that she woke up the next day, and it was 5 o'clock, because the kibbutz wakes up at 5 o'clock. Michal Peretz, by the way, says that taking the kibbutz out of a person is harder than taking Mitzrayim out of a person. The kibbutz was so ingrained in their bones that it's the people she has the hardest time working with are former kibbutz people. So she asked herself, Iris asked herself, what do I want to do? Do I want to get up, or do I want to stay sleeping? And she said, you know what? I want to sleep some more. And she went back to sleep until 6. 6 o'clock, she got up. What do I choose, to get up or to continue sleeping? She goes, I chose to continue to sleep. And then I got up at 7, and at 7 o'clock I said, do I choose to continue, or do I choose to get up? She said, I choose to get up. And she said it was like just doing that action was a huge change for her. And lo and behold, she started doing this a week before Pesach. She said, I want to tell you how my life changed. Iris, who lived in the kibbutz, she and her husband were not religious. And at a certain, I think when she was like 40, her husband passed away. No, sorry, when she was 30, her kids were really young. Her husband passed away, and she was left with 4 children in the kibbutz. And 10 years after, she was choser b'tshuva when her children were older, and she married another person who was choser b'tshuva, but none of her children became religious, and so she left the kibbutz, and her kids also did. It was a very, very left-wing secular kibbutz, to the extent that none of her children keep anything. They don't do brit milah to their children. They don't, they eat chametz on Pesach. No one fasts on Yom Kippur. It was things that they never had the slightest idea of. And when she was choser b'tshuva, her children who were 20 and older decided that it's not something that they want to take. So she said every single year when Pesach comes, and she's very close to her children, every single year when Pesach comes, she is constantly trying to find ways to get around going to her children's home, because the children have chametz all over the house, and she doesn't want to enter their homes. And like when her daughter would tell her, Ma, could you please watch the kids? So she would say, bring your children here, I'll watch them here. Or you want to come to my house? No, I don't feel good. Like, she would always make excuses. Like, for the last 20 years, she was never honest. And she said, now that she started to be honest with herself and asking herself every morning, what do I choose to do? Do I choose to wake up now? Or do I choose to continue sleeping? Her daughter called her up and said, Ma, you want to come over? We're having everyone is coming together. Her kids don't even do the Seder, but a day or two after the Seder, we're doing a small party. My child's birthday, and do you want to come over? She said, it's Pesach, and I can't come to your house. But if you want, you could make the birthday in my house. She said that the minute she was able to be honest with herself, she was then able to be honest with her children, and her children took it in a very comfortable and non-critical and non-resentful way. They were very, oh, it's your Pesach. Oh, okay, great, fine, we understand. And a couple of those situations arose where she previously didn't feel comfortable to be honest with her children. And at this time, because she was able to accept the parts of her, the easygoing part and the more, structured part, because both of these were able to come to the surface, that emet was able to be there. She was able to be be'emet with her children who are around her. Okay. Now, talking about avodot that we need to do, or avodot that we have in our lives, I wanted to mention Yom HaShoah that is going to be tonight here in Israel, and tomorrow, and I know it is everywhere. And there's a rabbi who I respect very much, and his name is Rabbi Zini. He is a rabbi of the Technion, and his mother went through the camps 5 years, and his father was one of the French soldiers who liberated the camp, and his mother was totally not religious. Like his mother was from a very secular family in Germany, and his father was actually from Algiers, because Algiers was under French rule, and he fought the Germans. He came from a very religious family, and they met together in the camps, and like a couple of months later they got married. And he was saying that the days that we have now between Pesach and Shavuot, it's like the days of Chol HaMoed. This is the Chol HaMoed between Pesach and Shavuot. It's like a miniature holiday of 49 days, where we build up into getting the Torah. And he was saying that he was very upset, and he felt like it was a stab at the religious people when they put Yom HaShoah on this day. And why did they put Yom HaShoah on this day? This day was when the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto took place. And in Israel, after the Holocaust, Israelis, and not the Holocaust survivors, even the Holocaust survivors actually, but the Israelis who lived here for a couple of years were very embarrassed by the Jews of Europe. They were very embarrassed because they would ask, like, why did you go like sheep to slaughter? There were literally 5 guards on 500 Jews. Why didn't you just jump on them and take their guns away? Or so 5 of you would get killed, but like, why don't you claim your life? And the so-called New Israeli wanted to prove that that we didn't go like to sheep like slaughter, and they wanted to commemorate the Warsaw Ghetto uprising as, look, we did take things into our own hands, and we did. And so they put Yom HaShoah right in the middle of Chol HaMoed, of like a very happy time of year that we should have, a time of growth, a time of inspiration, a time of aspiration, to aspire to, get to Matan Torah. And the Rabbanut actually asked the country's, leaders, they said, let's have it on Yud B'Tevet. Let's have it on Yud B'Tevet, the Yom HaShoah, because Yud B'Tevet is basically the Yom HaKadish HaKlali. It's the day where we say Kaddish for all those people who we don't know when they were killed. And that's the day we say Kaddish for them. And just a small story that his mother told him. His mother told him when she was in the camps, so they took everything from them and they were just stripped naked. And she said there was a girl there, and his mother was not religious. And there was a girl there that came from a Hasidic family, and she hid under her armpit a small bag of flour. And Rabbi Zini's mother asked her, like, you're going to get killed for it. Like, they told us to unclothe and put everything on the side. And what are you doing? And the girl said, it's soon Pesach and I want to bake my own matzot. Like, she could have saved gold, a little bit of gold. She could have saved some money. She could have saved the family pictures. But for her, it was Pesach and she was going to have matzah. And Rabbi Zini said that sometimes we look at Gevurah, sometimes like the people who, and this is a whole other story. The whole other question is, why did Hashem have Medinat Israel funded or founded by mostly non-religious Jews? They took it and ran with it. So they saw Gevurah as the uprising. But Rabbi Zini was saying there are other types of Gevurah, and that Gevurah is the Gevurah of maintaining your values, maintaining the mitzvot, the Torah, not allowing ourselves to be lost in Mitzrayim, but being able to take, that flower and hold on to it and know that this is what we need to in order for the Jewish people to continue surviving. I'm not going to relinquish that. And it was unfortunate that they didn't realize that is the Gevurah. So that was just a statement about Yom HaShoah in tonight that we are coming and approaching, though maybe it's not the optimal time to have it, but I want us to realize that Gevurah takes many shapes, and one of its shapes also is our Gevurah, our determination to take things in our character that need to be polished or altered or changed so that we can climb up to Matan Torah in a more cleaner way. So I think a lot of it is battling some of our characteristics that is hindering us from getting up to Har Sinai and standing over there, more with a wide heart, with a more clean countenance, shining countenance. Hold on, I'm going to stop the recording now in case anyone has a question or a comment. Okay. Very good. Thanks everyone for waiting. So this Chag Pesach, I had an amazing holiday. It was the best Pesach I've had for one reason and one reason only, which I want to share with you. First of all, it was great because the holidays, since I started learning, I see the holidays as an opportunity for me to see all the different parts of my family, and through them to get to know myself better. Because through them, I meet the different parts of me. Because in me, I have my mother, I have my father. In me, I have every one of my children and each one of their characteristics. They're part of me. And a holiday is the time where we could sit down and look around and be more aware of the different parts of me. I was able to see how much I grew this Pesach. I saw parts of me that opened and widened. And I also saw parts of me of what I still need to do, what I still need to aspire to. But why was my Pesach so amazing? Because my avodah this year was not to have expectations. I remember I told, everyone that I have such high expectations for the night, and inevitably they always get shattered. It doesn't live up to my expectations. When I said I wanted not to have expectations, is the only one I had expectations from is myself. I prepared what I wanted to say. I ended up saying part of what I wanted to say. And the other parts I might have shared with two people who were sitting around me. It was like a really big table, a couple of languages. And then I was also able to just sit back and be a spectator and look at everyone with a good eye. And I have to tell you that it was a far cry from other Pesachim that I had of looking, is everyone okay? Is everyone, does everyone have what they need? Is everyone happy? Like, I remember trying to take care of everyone and making sure that everything is going good for everyone. I decided everyone will take care of themselves. They will all make sure that they're good with their children, that they're good with themselves, that if anyone wants to say anything, they'll say whatever they want. Anyway, I really relinquished, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. Not that more divrei Torah was said, no, and not that I made better food, no, nothing of the sort. But I changed. I just stayed with the expectations I had of myself and did the learning that I wanted for myself. I actually prepared. I actually prepared a story. This is something that I enjoy doing. I prepared a story about a family that lived in Mitzrayim, and the mother, father, son, daughter, and baby, how they go through the shi'abud, the makot. And so there are little stories that I have, and it just makes the Yetziat Mitzrayim come alive for the little children. And I said to myself, I prepared, and if there'll be a chance for me to say it, I'll say it. And if no. Like usually other years I prepare, and then if I didn't get a chance to say it, I would be upset or annoyed, or I wouldn't even show it to anyone. But in my mind, I would grind everyone to pieces. So at a certain point in the Seder, and this was like a miracle, my daughter Shalhevet said, everyone, I need to say something. I have 2 children, and they're 2 and 4. And we keep on talking about telling about Yetziat Mitzrayim, but we never tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. I want my children to know the story. Like, could someone tell us the story? Could someone tell my children the story? And I said, I can. I'll tell them the story. And I spoke for 5 minutes, and then I said, I just didn't want to take up too much time. And I said, you know what? And the rest of the story I could tell you while we eat. And everyone was saying, no, tell it now. So I got a nice part, a nice chunk of a story, and that made Yetziat Mitzrayim come to life. And that was a true Yetziat Mitzrayim for me. I went to bed not feeling like I worked so hard, and the Seder didn't live up to my expectations. That was great. Okay, so now I want to focus on the preparation that we have for the next preparation that we have for the next 7 weeks. We have 7 weeks of preparation, and it's really unusual because usually, like let's say for Shabbat, we prepare for 7 days, and before every holiday, the most we ever prepare for is 30 days. Like they say, 30 days before the Pesach, we start preparing. In other words, like right after Purim, we start preparing for Pesach. Learning the halachot and knowing what is kosher and what's not, and how much we need to clean, etc., etc. But for Shavuot, we have 49 days of preparations. And as I said, these are like the days of Chol HaMoed, right? And I want all of us to be able to come up to Matan Torah in a different way of who we are now. So what is our destination? Our destination is Har Sinai. Now, there's something very beautiful about getting to Ma'amad Har Sinai, to getting to Mount Sinai. But why is it so intensive? Why do we need 49 days? Because let's say halachot, we learn all year. Torah, we learn all year. So what is this preparation all about? It's not about reading halachot, and it's not about learning more Torah, but it's a preparation to receive the Torah. Sorry, 1 minute. Okay, it's a preparation to receive the Torah by doing avodat midot on our character. Every day of the Omer is different avodah that we need to do, and the main preparation is as follows. They say that the word Sinai comes from soneh, to hate, and it also comes from there's a word shoneh, which is different. Sinai is sin'ah, and which is hate and difference. And so there's different, there's hate, there's Sinai, there's hate, there's different. Now, Sinai is the solution to our story. Who do we usually not like? Who do we hate? Who do we have machloket with? Who do we have decisiveness with, right? Who are we separate usually from? We usually don't like or separate or have machloket with a person who's different from us, someone who's shoneh, someone who's different. And when we see other people that are different, if we don't see that difference as something that is also within us, we're going to end up not liking it. Now, why are other people different? Why are people different? People are different because they grew up and were raised in different families, in different cultures, in different circumstances. They come from different places. They grew up different than me, with different values. Now, if we could internalize the fact that that difference is the variety that Hashem put in this world, but that difference just comes because all of us grew up in a very different way, right? So if we can accept that, we could learn to be good with everyone around us, with everyone and anyone around us. We could learn to be good, because all we need to say to ourselves, we all come from the same core, which is Hashem. However, we all split to thousands and millions of different families, and we all have different circumstances. And that's why this difference came down into the world. But around Har Sinai, we stood ke'ish echad belev echad. We stood like in one heart together. In Har Sinai, from there, we like our core was all the same, and then from there we split up into different families, and that's what created the difference. But there was a time that we were all together. We're all leaves on the same tree. We're all leaves on the same tree. Every leaf is different, like a fingerprint. However, we all came from the same core. We all came from the same tree. There's also another word that sounds a little bit like Sinai, and that's nisu'in. Nisu'in is marriage. Nisu'in, Sinai. Nisu'in comes from shoneh. There's shoneh. There's no one more different from me than my husband. And it's not for nothing that Hashem put a very, very different person next to me. It's for our ability to eradicate this kind of sin'ah, this kind of, when I say sin'ah, it does mean in the literal sense hate, but sin'ah means like an inability to accept that the other one is different. So marriage is a time where, it says Adam yada et Chava ishto. Adam knew Chava in the deepest sense of the way. We need to go to the person that we live with and to try to get to know them, to try to get to know what's at their core, where they're coming from, what drives them, what makes them tick, what makes them the way that they are, whether it's our spouses, our friends, our children, the people around us. And that will be bringing us back to Sinai, right? There's, as I said, there's no one, for me anyway, there's no one more different than me than my husband. And the other day, like I saw Ralph talking to my daughter who had a problem, who was struggling with something. And I thought to myself, if I was talking with her, there'd be in my heart some criticism, some judgmentalism about the topic that she was talking to him about it. And even though like I would be critical in my head, I don't even know if she would know it. But the fact that I know it would hinder. Okay, guys, sorry. Does everyone hear me? Is everyone
Now,
on?
yes. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
last thing I heard was when you were saying the difference between you hearing your daughter and your husband listening to your daughter and what you would be thinking in your head.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now let me just mute everyone 1 minute. Okay. Mute all, sorry. Okay. So even though my criticism wouldn't come out and the judgmentalism would be totally in my head, my husband sees everyone with a good eye, is, he's easy on himself, he's easy on the people around him. And I was grateful that, I have an accepting husband, non-critical husband, welcoming husband, where that my daughter can go to. And those are the things that I would like to learn from him and see how can I incorporate it into my life. So there's a reason why we have the spouse that we have, why we have the children we have. why we have the friends that we have, the mother, the fathers that we have. We stood under the mountain, Ke'ish echad ben. Okay, Ke'ish echad belev echad. There is a pasuk in Mishlei that says, Urekav atzamot kin'ah. Rekav atzamot kin'ah means that when one feels envy, the envy is, how do you say, is imprinted in a person's bones, and they actually make our bones rot, the envy that is internalized in the bones. And this is just an aside, like I've heard Michal Peretz, when people say, I feel envious of someone. No, when people say that they have pains in their bones or any kind of bone disease, she does avodah on them with jealousy. She says that is like, if we take care of that jealousy, we won't have bone pain. Okay, that's the spiritual way of looking at illness. The spiritual way of looking at illness. Okay, so every mitzvah that a Jewish person does becomes internalized in their bones, and that's why we bury people. We bury people because the mitzvot that we do are imprinted in us. And Avraham was the first one who buried his dead because of that. Now, when we want to be able to come to Har Sinai with our mitzvot imprinted in our bones. Okay, we want to come with mitzvot imprinted in our bones. And how do we do that? So I want to go back to Leil HaSeder. In Leil HaSeder, we say that there are three things we need to say in order for us to fulfill the mitzvah of Pesach. We need to say Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. What is this? What is Pesach? Why do we have to say it? In the time of the Beit HaMikdash, when people said Pesach, they actually meant the Korban Pesach. Korban is a sacrifice. Like in the time of the Beit HaMikdash is people wouldn't be cleaning up their houses for Pesach. They would just take the chametz out of the house, and families would go out with their lamb and walk towards Yerushalayim and walk towards the Beit HaMikdash. And, on the way, they would be meeting their friends, and they'd see people from, different cities, and everyone would be walking to sacrifice the Korban Pesach. And it was like a huge tidal wave that went through the land. But why is it that if we don't say Pesach, we're not doing the Korban now, we didn't fulfill the mitzvah of the Seder? What does it mean that we say Pesach? What does that mean? It means that we need to sacrifice the avodah zarah that is still in me. The sheep was the Egyptians' avodah zarah, and that's what we need to slaughter. And I want to just this is a more kind of a Kabbalistic explanation, because we're looking now at the Pesach as a more spiritual kind of avodah. So on the 9th plague, where there was the Choshech, so Paro came to Moshe and he told him, listen, I have had it. I'm sick and tired of this. You can go, you and the children and the adults, go to the desert. You're free to go. And you'd think that Moshe, this is what he was asking for all along. And after 210 years of enslavement, he would say, let's get the heck out of here. And Moshe doesn't say that. Moshe says, not only am I going to go, I'm going to go, and you're going to give us the sheep and the animals, because without them, I am not going. And why was Moshe wanting to take these animals and the sheep to sacrifice? It's because without these sacrifices, we can't get closer to Hashem. And when I say sacrifices, what do I mean by that? What I mean is there are parts in us that we need to sacrifice. And they need to be sacrificed because they hinder us getting close to Hashem. First of all, Moshe was saying, I won't leave Mitzrayim without the sheep, so that generations are going to know that we didn't leave Mitzrayim in order to go and be enslaved to other forms of Avodah Zarah, and we'll get to that in a minute. Because if we don't leave Mitzrayim to go worship Hashem, right? Just like Moshe says, let my people go, and no one ever says the next part, V'yavduni bamidbar. Like we're leaving. We're not leaving to go to find something else to worship. We're leaving to go to get closer to Hashem. And the way we get close to Hashem is for us to sacrifice the Avodah Zarah within us, which is what Moshe wanted to take. He wanted to take Egypt's Avodah Zarah and sacrifice it, and he wasn't going to leave without it. Okay.
Can I ask you a question? Is it okay?
Sure. Yeah,
When you shared your story, when you shared at your Seder, did you add this part in? I'm just curious, even if it was on a younger level, that about Yetziat Mitzrayim, about the idea that it's not just to leave, but it's then to serve Hashem, get close to Hashem.
I didn't mention this at the Seder this year. It was not mentioned. Why?
Mm-hmm. No,
tell me
I
why
was
you're
asking
asking.
more intimately as it relates to specifically the kid that asked you to tell about it, and
yeah, it would have been a great. No, did not.
Right,
It didn't come up. I really focused a lot more on the children.
Mm-hmm. No,
I
but
focused
even
a lot
still,
more on the children.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you.
Got lost. It got lost in the story.
Right. No,
but you want to know something interesting?
You could do part two. You could,
Yeah. Wait, but I want to tell you something really interesting. This is kind of personal. Okay, everyone's gonna hear it, and it's taped. I look at my daughter Shalhevet, and she's not Shomer Torah. She is some and some not. She considers herself atheist, and I think to myself, what will be with her will be. But I think that we have a second chance with her children. Like I relinquished trying to talk to her, convince her, change her mind.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Things. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. I don't say it.
No, I'm saying regarding the children. That's why that's what I was.
Right. So, okay. So the children are 2 and 4. So I'm hoping it'll come up, in further years. But I'm now more focused on the next generation. It's between her and Hashem. The next generation is what we have in our hands right now, that we might be able to influence, it's really interesting because people used to ask me 10 years ago, 8 years ago, what's the difference between children and grandchildren? So I said, with my children, I always used to think like, how do we educate them and raise them and teach them? And how do we, what kind of schools they're going to go to, whatever, everything like that. And with my grandchildren, it's up to their parents. Like, I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to lose sleep over how we'll educate them. And I find myself just the opposite. Like now I find myself responsible for my grandchildren also. And I feel like it was Hashem telling me, it was like, Yaakov wanted to just be in peace after he left Laban's house. And then he came and he had the thing with Dinah, and he had the thing with Yosef, and then with Binyamin and Rachel, and she dies. And the rabbis say we didn't come to this world to just have an easy life. We're not here to have an easy life. We are here to constantly grow. So okay, so when Moshe said, let my people go so that they could worship Hashem, he wants to let us know that there are many gods out there to worship, and we need to slaughter them, because only a servant of Hashem is free, as Rabbi Yehuda Levi says. And if we leave Mitzrayim and we don't go towards God, towards Sinai, then we'll go worship other gods, right? And like a person, he stops smoking, and then he goes and he starts eating food, and then he stops eating the food and he becomes addicted to other things. And addictions are various. Like when I say addiction, I say there are some people who are addicted to comparing themselves and other people. She's better than me. She does, her children are like this, her husband is like that, her family, her house is run. Like, that's an addiction to comparing. Some people are addicted to criticism of themselves. Like, they're down on themselves. Why do I always do like this? And why am I not? And why are my children not? And like, self-criticism. Why can't I get my act together? Okay, there are people who are addicted to perfection, right? It reminds me of my friend who like wanted everything to be perfect and it wasn't, and she was miserable. And I asked her, like, why, if everything was perfect, what would everyone see? And she said, if everything was perfect, then they'd see how amazing I was. And I said, our job in this world is not to show everyone how amazing we are. Our job in this world is for people to be able to see Hashem through you, right? I don't want them to see you. Oh my God, look how, she hosts so amazing. She's so perfect. The food is this, like there's just perfection going on in her house. Then all they see is her. But if they see someone who enjoys hosting and is smiling and the way things turn out, she knows that's the way Hashem meant for them to turn out, then it's not about her, it's about Hashem. And we're here in this world for people to see Hashem through us. We're not here for everyone to see how amazing we are. So all these that I mentioned, these addictions, those are things that enslave us. And those are the things we need to slaughter. Moshe was saying, we're not going to leave Mitzrayim unless we can't stand on unless we slaughter those avodah zarah, those addictions. So, and if I don't move towards Sinai, if I don't move towards Har Sinai, towards getting of the Torah, they will continue to enslave me. So Moshe wanted Paro to know where we're leaving to worship Hashem, and only if we have sacrifices to give. In order to get to worship Hashem, there are sacrifices that we need to do along the way, and we're not leaving without it. So Mitzrayim does not relinquish its hold on us. When I say Mitzrayim doesn't relinquish, Mitzrayim are the different addictions that we have, or Mitzrayim are all the things that make us feel narrow and constricted. And even after we leave Mitzrayim, we still have Paro running after us, right? We could come out of our spiritual Mitzrayim, like coming out of self-doubt. And we could come out of Mitzrayim, which is also part of hating the difference, right? Forms of perfectionism. We want to come out of that Mitzrayim and slaughter that avodah zarah and get closer to Hashem. And that is the goal. So every vestige of avodah zarah, of addiction, of dimyonot, of imaginations, of questions of what if, of looking at the past and feeling bad about it. Sometimes we even worship those dimyonot, and we need to relinquish it. We need to relinquish every part of it. And slowly, very slowly, we're going to realize that people are different, as I said before, because they come from different homes and each wants to continue their own home. Like, I was thinking of my grandmother who lived in the time of the Tsena. Tsena is when things were very constricted in Israel, there was hardly any food to buy. Tomatoes were very expensive. And my grandmother would buy 2 tomatoes a week, and she would cut a half, and that half she would cut to 4 or 5 pieces and give it for breakfast. And the other half was for dinner. And, each one would have 1 slice of tomato. And her Torah is that everything is very precious. That's the kind of house that she came from and that she passed to us. Things are precious, and we need to appreciate everything. Everything has a purpose, right? That was my grandmother. That actually also was Michal Peretz's grandmother. And on the other hand, her husband came from a Moroccan home that the rule in the house is that when you finish a meal, everything that's left we throw out. And that Torah is a Torah of abundance. Now, when Michal and her husband get together, they're so different that all they can do is fight about which way is the right way. Michal wants to eat all the leftovers from Shabbat throughout Wednesday, and her husband, the minute Shabbat is out, throw out all the food. Sunday, let's cook something new. And that could be a point of strife and contention. And this is just like a very small example. There are usually much bigger points of strife and contention with the people around us. And getting to Har Sinai, that we are able to appreciate the difference, and that we will not have any hatred or any hard feelings in us, is the knowledge that both this abundance that her husband lives in and her appreciation of every little thing that is precious and not wanting to throw everything out, both of them are parts in her, and both of them need to be acknowledged, appreciated, and elevated, and be made peace one with the other. And that way we could go up to Sinai without any sin'ah and with appreciating the difference. I just thought of Rabbi Sachs' book, The Dignity of Difference. Highly recommended. It's like it's one of the points that he makes. And if we don't appreciate that dignity of difference and realizing that both of those movements are within me, we'll have World War III on our hands. World War III because we're different, because people are different from us. And we need to realize that the peace needs to come within us. And then that will bring us to Sinai in a very peaceful way. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop here and ask. I have like literally another half hour of this, but I'm going to need to stop now because I need to go. But I want to stop the recording and just ask if anyone has questions. And I'm going to continue this class next week.